What do you think?
Okay, we are recording.
All right, we are recording. All righty. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. Due to the governor's statewide disaster declaration relating to the COVID-19 pandemic and current public health guidelines for social distancing, the Long Grove Village president, that'd be Bill, has determined it is not prudent for the members of public bodies, including this joint review board or staff, to convene in person for today's meeting. Therefore, this joint review board is a meeting by video conference. The same conditions require barring access to the public for in-person attendance, and in light of those limitations, the public is invited to attend and listen here to this meeting through Zoom platform or by phone as indicated on the public meeting agenda. To comply with the Open Meetings Act requirements for virtual meetings, today's meeting is being recorded. At this point, then we need to take a roll call of the taxing district representatives who are eligible to be members of this joint review board. If you are a member of that taxing district, please state your name, which district you represent, and whether you can hear and be heard. Village of Long Grove.
That's you.
I think that's me. Okay. Yeah. College of Lake County. County of Lake. Gila Township. Kildare Countryside Consolidated School District 96. Stevenson High School District 125, Long Grove Park District, Long Grove Fire Protection District, Vernon Area Public Library District, and the public, the public member of public is represented by Richard Tourette.
I am here.
Good, you can hear and be heard.
Absolutely.
We need to select a chairperson for this joint review board.
I'd like to move that Ann Kritzmeyer serves as the chairperson of the JRB. Does somebody want a second?
Ann, you're the only one eligible to second right now.
Well, then I will second the motion. And we need to vote by a roll call, and I think it's you and me, Richard. So, Richard?
Aye.
Okay, and I will vote aye. And take notes. All right, so our business today, we will be listening and considering a presentation regarding the proposed TIF district from Lee Brown of Tesca. Lee and Denise, are you going to be showing anything on the screen?
I do have a PowerPoint. And I can turn it up.
I'll make you co-host then, Lee.
Okay. Yes. Well, at this point, it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
I'm just making you the co-host.
Okay.
Is it working now?
There we go.
Great.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay.
It's black and white, Lee. Is that intended? Oh, here we go. Now we've got some color.
It's retro.
Gotcha.
All right, let's start with some TIP 101 basics just to cover our bases. First, the purpose of the tax increment financing is to eliminate blight or those conditions which lead towards the establishment of blight, to promote economic development, to enhance the tax base. All of that aimed at the government's opportunity to restore and rehabilitate properties and the tax base that they engender. It is a tool in which the public and private work together to establish new value, increased value, and tax base, and for the utility of the uses that they support. It's flexible in that it accommodates not only the direct tool of tax increment, but also is compatible with special service areas, business districts, enterprise zones, and other tools. It's specific to the area in which it is adopted. That is, I'll hold for a moment. Is anyone entering that can introduce themselves? If not,
we can circle back on that.
Okay.
It's Benito.
Thank you. The project area base means that the generation of tax increment must be spent within the project area itself, and it's completely under the local control. So this is a classic image that attempts to portray the potential of TIF increasing tax base over time. The horizontal row responsible for represents the years of the TIF district in place, and the vertical element being the increase in property taxes, or in effect the equalized assessed value. This line, can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
This line representing the base that is established at the date of the adoption of the TIF itself. The value of property goes up and down. The base stays the same, in which we measure the difference between what the equalized assessed value was at the beginning of the project, and over time, with the influence of the district itself encouraging redevelopment and additional increase in value. The triangle here represents the area above the base, and therefore the area or the values that are available for the TIF district to collect incremental revenue. So over time, the intent is to increase the value of the property within the TIF district itself, and thus capture redevelopment increment, which can be used to encourage additional development. All this aimed at creating what's considered a positive cycle of generation of value, which generates increment that's available to support additional value generation. Ultimately, at the end of the district, which has a maximum of 23 years, the entire value, both the base and the increased EAV, is available to all the taxing jurisdictions. During the period of the life of the district, which can be, again, up to 23 years, but shorter if the work of the district is complete and the TIF district's costs are completely paid for, it can exist in a period less than 23 years. If that is to occur, the value increase over that period of time is available again to pay for TIF costs. The area here is identified by the red boundary and briefly Lake Hook Road on the southern boundary of the village, Route 53, which is just a hair to the east of the boundary, since the property that you're seeing here is actually within the village. All the properties within the project area must be within the village. The exclusion of Menards and properties to the southeast allows this redevelopment area to be within the entirely within the village, and is consistent with the eligibility criteria. The property that is bounded by that red line includes 2 structures and 18 parcels, a total of approximately 60 acres. For this morning's meeting, the role of the JRB is focused on identifying, first, reviewing the redevelopment plan and the proposed ordinances to support the adoption of tax increment. Second, to provide a recommendation in writing within the next 30 days based on 2 evaluations. First, does the redevelopment plan meet the requirements as defined in the state statute? So that's the document and the plan itself. And second, does the project area meet the eligibility requirements as defined in the state statutes? And that's what we're about to go through. So the minimum requirements for the plan itself include identifying the project area boundary, including redevelopment goals and objectives, a reason for establishing the TIF and how the land will be used, the proposed budget and timeline, conformance with the village's comprehensive plan, identifying the process necessary to amend the plan, a report on the impact to other taxing jurisdictions, a statement supporting the but-for identification that without tax increment this would not redevelop, and all these requirements have been identified in the redevelopment plan. That's our recommendation to the JRB. So for the eligibility requirements for the redevelopment district itself, we have prepared a document that identifies the characteristics amongst the 13 characteristics that can be considered. The project area for what we're calling a conservation area must identify at least 3 eligibility criteria from that list, and 50% or more of the structures must be 35 years or more in age. The list of eligibility criteria include many physical and economic characteristics. We've identified the existence and the presence to a considerable degree of obsolescence, dilapidation, excessive vacancy, deterioration, inadequate utilities, and the decline in equalized assessed value. And we'll go through these within the project area. I stated before that there are 2 buildings within the proposed project area. First, there is a single-family residence in the southwest corner, and second, there is the existing building, which originally was the Geimer property. Of those 2 buildings, only the single-family residence exceeds the 35 years in age, but that is 50% of the total buildings within the area. The characteristic of obsolescence is defined in the statutes as the condition or process of falling into disuse, and structures have become ill-suited for their original purpose. In this case, we talk about 2 forms of obsolescence: functional obsolescence and economic obsolescence. In general, functional obsolescence relates to the physical utility of a property or structure for use, and economic obsolescence relates to the ability of the property or building to compete in the marketplace. So we have included within the redevelopment plan as an appendices the eligibility report, which identifies the characteristics that I'm speaking to. And obsolescence in this case relates to the lack of utility and lack of competitiveness in the marketplace of the properties within the area. The second characteristic that I'm speaking to is dilapidation, and this somewhat longer definition with respect to buildings defects, including but not limited to major defects in secondary building components such as doors, windows, porches, gutters, downspouts, fascia. With respect to surface improvements, meaning physically on the property, that the conditions of a roadway, alley, curb, gutter, sidewalks, off-street parking, surface storage areas evidencing deterioration, including but not limited to the surface cracking, crumbling, potholes, depressions, loose paving materials, and weeds protruding through the paved surfaces. So in specific, the 2727 building, which we identified previous as the former Geimer properties, displays an extreme physical state of disrepair, with neither of the tenants using or maintaining the greenhouse and other structures on the site. The evidence of wall, floor, structural dilapidation is also present. The characteristics of excessive vacancy, there's basically 2 forms of vacancy, that is vacant buildings and vacant sites. Of the 2 buildings, there is vacancy within the Geimer property buildings, particularly the more than 50% of the I guess you would call it the west and southwest portions of the building remains vacant. And then also a considerable portion of the remainder of the 60 acres is vacant. There is deterioration as defined by the statute with respect to the buildings, defects, including but not limited to the major defects in secondary building components and surface conditions. And we've identified in the plan that those physical features on the site which have deteriorated. Also, inadequate utilities as defined in statutes, underground and overhead utilities such as storm sewers and storm drainage, sanitary sewers, water lines, and gas, telephone, electrical services that are shown to be inadequate. Inadequate utilities are those that are, one, of insufficient capacity to serve the use in the redevelopment project area, two, deteriorated, antiquated, obsolete, or in disrepair, or three, lacking within the redevelopment project area. And we've identified that the vast majority of the property is not served by public water or wastewater sewage utilities. That in the past there has been specific attempts to develop or redevelop the 2727 Route 53 property, but the lack of public utilities impeded that, and the cost of bringing utilities to the site was an impediment to market conditions to allow for the redevelopment of the property. 5 undeveloped properties at the southern end of the project area are served by public utilities and are subject to recapture agreements that increase the cost of acquisition or property development. And then decline in equalized assessed value. And I'm going to read this because it's sort of complicated. Total equalized assessed value of the proposed redevelopment project area has declined for 3 of the last 5 calendar years prior to the year in which the redevelopment project area is designated, or is increased at an annual rate that is less than the balance of the municipality for 3 of the last 5 calendar years. In this case, there's actual decline in the equalized assessed value, and it's also relative to the increases that occurred in the remainder of the village. So in 2015, the project area's EAV declined by over 7%. In 2018, it declined by 20%, and in 2019, the tax year 2019, it declined 1.7% from its prior year value. In the short term, the village's effective use of tax increment financing can be expected to stabilize the existing tax base for local taxing agencies. And in the long term, after the completion of all the redevelopment improvements, payments of all the redevelopment project costs and the municipal obligations, so the end of the TIF district, we can expect the EAV increased and supporting all of the taxing jurisdictions with increased EAV. So in summary, the proposed redevelopment project plan contains all of the required plan elements as outlined in the Act, and the proposed project area qualifies as a conservation area based on the definitions and requirements established in the Act.
So thanks so much, Lee. That was fabulous. I think well done. And if anybody's listening to this recording, they'll be able to follow that very well. Just as a matter of course, is Richard, you're the only joint review board member who is here. You did receive the proposed plan and program, or you have access to it on the website?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Does anybody on the joint review board have questions or comments, or anybody from the public? I guess we'll do the public as well. We'll have Vic review the ordinance, and then we'll ask for public questions. Richard, any questions, comments?
No, I will state that I think that area would really benefit from moving forward on this, but it's blight. So
we had a development brought before the village board that I think we were really encouraged by, and it was a shame that the economics were not able to allow that to proceed. So I'd like to see this too. Vic, can you please review the draft ordinance that adopts the plan that we have before us? You're on mute, Vic.
I was doing my mime routine. I guess I'm not so good at it.
There you go. You need a puppet.
Yeah. The draft ordinance, which again, I hope people did receive that. If not, it is on the website.
Yep.
Is a pretty vanilla document. It essentially recites some of the information that Lee just summarized in the report, and it identifies the report with specificity and some of the steps that are required in order to move forward with the TIF plan. Ultimately, what the ordinance does is adopt or make the findings that, again, are in the eligibility report incorporated into the plan that Lee has just outlined. It then, after that, approves the redevelopment plan and the eligibility report that's inside. And it is one of 3 ordinances that will be adopted as part of the TIF. This is the one that the Joint Review Board has purview over, but the other 2 are companion ordinances that identify specifically the plan or the district itself. In other words, setting the boundaries, which are already identified in the plan, and formally adopting tax increment financing as the vehicle for achieving the redevelopment activities. So this is the, Lee got the sexy part. I got to just sort of carry the hanger along.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Anybody from the public who is here who would like to make a comment or ask a question?
Hi, this is Tyler Edwards from Menards.
Hi, Tyler. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, no problem. No problem at all. I have a question about the project area. Is everything one project area? So if this, something across the street redevelops or the old greenhouse redevelops, the TIF countdown starts at that point in time? Or is each individual lot a separate project that gets its own TIF repayment countdown?
The TIF redevelopment period begins upon the adoption of the 3 ordinances that I've just identified, and it'll be 23 years for the TIF district. The timing for the individual properties and their development is all going to be directly associated with that only. But as to the TIF, it is a single unit, has a single lifespan, and the monies generated from it all go into the general redevelopment incremental tax fund.
Okay, so it starts with when it's adopted.
Yeah, it starts when it's adopted. The way I think about it is that adopting the TIF district creates an environment for redevelopment, and then the projects come up as they make sense for different parties who would like to develop projects within there. So it's one TIF district, multiple projects potentially.
Okay. In the TIF money in Illinois, I don't do a lot in Illinois, covers non-vertical redevelopment. Is that correct?
It can cover both vertical and non-vertical. I'm interpreting your term, meaning buildings and sites. However,
Yep.
It cannot support the construction of new buildings. It can support rehabilitation of existing buildings, but for the most part, it is, I guess you're terming it the horizontal or non-vertical part, which is site improvements and public utilities and the potential for assisting in bringing utilities to the site, et cetera.
Okay. So as far as a marketing tool for us for these lots, we can add the horizontal improvements.
Infrastructure, utilities, some of the things that Lee identified, yes.
Okay, great. And
As potential.
what was the total approved amount for the TIF area or TIF project?
Well, there is no actual commitment. By adopting the TIF district, it does not commit the village to spending specific dollar amounts. There is essentially a cap on the amount that it can spend based on the number that is in the budget. And the budget has a series of line items that allow for the expenditures that are consistent with the state statutes. ultimately, it depends on how much increment is actually generated by new development. So the estimated cap, which exceeds $7 million, is based on a admittedly a rosy scenario about the potential for redevelopment of properties consistent with the development characteristics within Lake County and in corridors of similar nature. And we put that number reasonably high because it is a cap above which the village could not spend without amending the TIF district. But that's sort of complicated to say. The number is I will not say meaningless because it has a cap and therefore it has meaning, but it does not commit the village to spending $7 million. It just means that if development occurs to the extent that we hope it does, it makes those monies potentially available for expenditures.
Sure, that makes sense. Is property acquisition a reimbursable expense in this TIF?
Assembly of property, which includes acquisition, yes, is reimbursable.
Okay. Sounds good.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, Richard, you and I are the joint review board members. Any discussion between you and me? I think you've already made a comment and so have I.
No, I'm good with it, Ann. So.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, is there a motion to recommend approval of this ordinance?
I move that the Joint Review Board recommend approval of the proposed redevelopment plan and program and the draft ordinance adopting such a plan.
I guess that leaves me to second. I second that motion. And I need to roll call. So Richard, your vote, please.
A.
And I vote aye. I vote aye. So that motion carries. Is there any other comment or business that we have before us for this joint review board? None was on the agenda. Okay, then Richard, can I ask for a motion to adjourn?
Before you do that, I just want to say thank you to you both for doing this, and thank you all for joining. I think this is going to be a good thing for our village, so thank you.
I very much agree. Thank you all for joining. And thank you, Lee. That was a very nice presentation. Appreciate it.
Same from me. I motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second. So Richard, is your vote?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So that means this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. If there are further questions, please contact the village hall. Certainly all of the materials are on the website.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thanks,
Have a good
everyone.
day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good day. Yep.
Thank you.